Whoever said it's not easy to raise a teenager knew what they were talking about. I'm raising one, and lately I have no idea what's going on with her. I'm Amelia, and the teenager I was talking about is my niece Ella. I'm 24, she's 16. Recently, I've been noticing some changes in her behavior. They're stressing me out. I have no idea how to handle the situation calmly, and I don't want to risk making any wrong moves. She's a teenager after all, so I would really appreciate it if you guys could help me access the situation and tell me the best way to go about it, solving it. Let me start by offering a bit of background. Ella is the daughter of my late sister. Ever since my sister and her husband passed away, I've been the one looking after their daughter, Ella. It hasn't been an easy journey, but she's a sweet girl who deserves all the love and support in the world. The bond between us built after she lost her parents, but from the day she was born, I've had a special bond with her. I remember holding her as a baby, her tiny fingers wrapping around mine, and her bright eyes looking up at me with that innocent curiosity only babies have. As she grew, I became her go-to person for everything. Whether it was reading her bedtime stories, baking cookies, or rainy afternoons, or just listening to her talk about her day, I was there. When Ella's parents passed away, it was devastating. She was just a teenager, and I knew I had to step in and be there for her in every way possible. She moved into a hostel for her studies, but I made sure she knew my door was always open and she could come to me for anything. We kept in touch regularly, calling and texting, and I'd visit her as often as I could. She always seemed to be doing well, thriving in her studies, making friends, and generally just being the happy, cheerful girl I always knew her to be. Ella was always a ray of sunshines. She had this infectious laugh that could light up a room, and she loved being around people. She was the kind of girl who made friends easily and was always the life of any gathering. Even in school, she was the one organizing events, volunteering for everything, and just being her happy-go-lucky self. Her teachers adored her, her friends looked up to her, and even at family gatherings, everyone wanted to be around Ella. I believe this must have given you enough ideas about the type of kid Ella is. She's always been a good child, I swear. Never created a mess or trouble, and I'm not saying she was always, not mischievous, but it was the kind of mischief that you crave. The kind that freshens up the air and the mood and just simply brightens your day. Now, let me tell you why I'm here. Every year during her summer vacations, Ella comes to stay with us. It wasn't just me. Even my husband and in-laws loved her and always looked forward to her coming over to stay with us. So when summer rolled around and Ella came to stay with us again, I was thrilled. Our house was always a bit crowded this time, as besides my husband, Adrian, and in-laws, my brother Liam and his wife had also come over to stay with us for the summer. I knew it could get chaotic, but I was sure that we would manage to make it work. Ella usually fits right in with everybody. She brings her vibrant energy into people's lives. I was looking forward to spending time with her, catching up on life, and just enjoying her company. However, things did not go like I expected. The first few weeks were perfectly normal. Ella would join us for breakfast, and we would chit-chat about her classes and her friends. She helped me in the kitchen just like in old times, and we baked cookies or made dinner together. She seemed happy, or at least that's what I thought. But about a month later, things started to change. At first, it was little things. She would come down late for breakfast or sometimes skip it altogether. I didn't think much of it. She's a student, after all, and I figured that she just wanted to sleep in. But then she started missing lunch too and dinner, and she would stay in her room for hours, barely coming out even when I knocked on her door and called her. It was strange because Ella had always been so social and cheerful. Seeing her withdraw like that was concerning. I tried talking to her, but she just smiled and assured me everything was fine. I knew something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. As the days went by, her behavior grew more troubling. Ella stopped coming out of her room almost entirely. She didn't eat with us, didn't join in on any family activities, and when we did see her, she looked tired and worn out. Her bright, cheerful demeanor was gone, replaced by this shadow of the girl that she used to be. My husband, Adrian, noticed it too. He pointed out that Ella did not come down for dinner again. I couldn't help but sigh, feeling the weight of the worry pressing down on me. I tried talking to her, but she just brushed me off, saying she's fine. Adrian has always been close to Ella, like an uncle she could confide in. He tried to talk to her a few times, but she just brushed him off. My mother-in-law suggested we give her some space, saying maybe she was just adjusting or dealing with some personal stuff. But it wasn't just a phase. It got much, much worse. Ella started to look more and more exhausted. She didn't join us for meals, did not come out of her room unless absolutely necessary, and even then she barely spoke to anybody. Her eyes lost that little sparkle, and her laughter, once so frequent, was nowhere to be heard. I was heartbreaking to see this go down like this, so I decided I had to do something. One morning, after another night of hearing her pacing in her room, I decided enough was enough. I knocked on her door a little harder this time, and when there was no answer, I pushed the door open gently. Ella was sitting on her bed, her knees drawn up to her chest, staring at the floor. She looked up when I walked in, and I could see the tiredness in her eyes. It broke my heart to see her like this, and I sat down beside her, placing a hand on her back. I knew I had to reach her somehow. Slowly, she started to open up. Ella began talking about her parents, how much she missed them, and how hard it's been since they passed away. We spent a long time discussing things, reminiscing about the good times and sharing stories, and laughing about the funny moments we remembered. She talked about how her father used to take her to the park every Sunday, and how her mother would make her favorite chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast. We recalled the family trips we took together, the holidays we spent together, and the birthdays that we celebrated. Ella's eyes would light up when she talked about these memories, and for a while it felt like we were back in those happy times. But despite all the reminiscing, I sensed there was something much deeper, something that she wasn't telling me and she was still holding back. Every time I tried to gently steer the conversation towards what might be bothering her right now, she would shut down, brush it off, and make some excuses like, "I'm just tired. It's nothing, really." It was clear that she didn't want to open up about whatever was truly troubling her. I tried everything I could think of to get her to talk. I reassured her that she could trust me and that I was here for her no matter what. I told her that it's okay to feel overwhelmed, that she didn't have to go through it alone. But no matter what I said, she kept her walls up and she would smile and thank me, but then just retreat back into her shell. Days turned into weeks and I found myself growing more and more worried. Ella's behavior didn't improve much. She still spent most of her time in her room, only coming out when she absolutely had to. Adrian and I talked about it a lot, and he was as worried as I was, and we both felt at a loss. We wanted to help her and be there for her, but we didn't know how. Then, yesterday, I went to her room to give her her favorite chocolate milk, but found her crying on her bed instead. My heart dropped. I couldn't stand the thought of her being in so much pain, especially alone. There she was, curled up on her bed, tears streaming down her face, and in my worry, I lost my patience. I sat beside her and asked her what was wrong, but she just shook her head. She sobbed, and it grew louder, and frustrated and scared, I pressed her harder, my voice raising. I demanded to know what she was having going on, and why she was shutting us all out. I didn't really mean to shout, but the words came out harsher than I intended. Ella looked at me, eyes wide, with a mix of fear, and it broke me. She didn't say anything to me, she just turned away, burying her face into the pillow. I realized that I might have pushed her far. Now I'm not feeling guilty, but scared. I should have had better control over my feelings. I can't help but feel that I maybe have made things much, much worse. My baby is in so much pain, and I'm not able to do anything. I feel hopeless, helpless, not knowing how to reach her or what to do. Do you guys have any ideas? And if yes, please do let me know. I'm desperate for help. Update number 1. Hello, I'm losing my pancake flipping mind over here. How can somebody stoop so low? My niece is only 16 years old and she's a good child. She doesn't deserve this. I know I'm probably messing with your heads too. I'm sorry. I can't help it. I'm actually losing my mind here and don't know what to do. Remember a week ago I told you guys how I was worried about my niece? The bubbly little girl I've known from childhood and practically raised is lost. And there seems to be a girl who's clearly depressed, sad, and lost in her own ways all the time instead of her. Trust me, when I say I was wrong, and so were all of you. I basically thought it could be stress from school. Many of you suggested it in the comments, which I'm very thankful for. Your comments helped me a lot to think from different perspectives about the possibility that it could have something to do with a rift with one of her friends, or that there could be boy troubles. If only it were that simple. So let me explain from the very beginning. So 2 days after I posted my first update, somebody commented that maybe I should try looking into my niece's phone. I know this is not the most ideal solution, but I was getting desperate. So After I read the comment, I thought about it and decided to go ahead and do it. I went to Ella's room, and luckily she was in the shower. Quickly and quietly, I went inside her room and looked for her phone. Once I found it, opening it was easy peasy. Of course, the password was my late sister's birth date. However, before I could search any further, her phone started to ring. At the same time, Ella's shower stopped, meaning she was coming out, and I quickly shut off the phone, carefully placed it back where it was, and went out of the room. I was barely out of the room when Ella came back and picked up her phone. She sounded scared, and I just tried to listen hard without revealing myself. At first, her replies were vague, asking who it was over and over again, but suddenly her voice started to quiver, and she was on her knees asking the other person what he wanted. Her voice was so shaky, and I caught phrases like, "How would you know what I'm wearing? What do you want? Don't call me ever again." Sorry, guys, I was scared. It would be an understatement. I could not stop myself any longer, and I marched into the room. However, as soon as Ella saw me, she gets up, declined the phone call, and wiped her face clean. Why would she do that? I asked her what's wrong. She laughed, a silly laugh, and told me that she slipped. Believe me when I say it broke my heart to see her lie like that. What I didn't understand was why she would lie to me. I didn't want to push her away, given what happened the last time, so I accepted her excuse, and I just hugged her. I left the room determined to try again some other time, and if anything, I'm sure that someone is watching her, and things may be far more serious than any of us anticipated. However, I'm not going to give up. I'll try again to get to the bottom of it. I'll keep you guys updated. Update number 2. A huge thanks to whoever suggested I check my niece's phone under the last update, because that worked and I'm glad I invaded her privacy. Otherwise, I would have never learned the truth. So I know, it's only been 2 days since I last posted, but as you can guess, I'm running low on patience. Knowing how distracted and scared Ella is, I could not delay the matter any longer. So yesterday, I snuck into my niece's room again, got a hold of her mobile device, and what I saw shocked me to the core. I went directly to the messaging app first and found a series of messages from an unknown number. I scrolled to the top and saw many indecent pictures of my niece. I was horrified I couldn't look at it, but I forced myself to, and I'm just glad I did, because on a closer look, I was able to tell that it wasn't Ella. These were her deep fake images, created most probably by using artificial intelligence. But it was horrifying all the same. AI. The pictures were manipulated to look like she was in very compromising situations, and inappropriate. As you may have guessed, the messages accompanying the images were horrifying. Somebody was threatening to share these fake images with her friends, her school, and even online if she did not comply with the demands. They were asking for money, and worse, making all sorts of inappropriate requests. Then I scrolled down slowly and read it. I was just glad to find out that Ella has not complied with any of the requests so far. However, that hasn't stopped him from pestering her. I wondered why Ella had not simply blocked him, but upon searching for a while, I learned that she had blocked 3 separate numbers already, and she has received a threat that if she blocks the number, again, he'll just release her images online. As I got to more recent messages, it became crystal clear that Ella, now knew the identity of the person, and for some reason he felt someone familiar. I just didn't know who. As I was reading those messages, the phone chimed and she received a new text from the same number. The manipulation of this man. He was talking to her, asking her to wear something pink as it makes her look pretty. I was disgusted to the core, and I felt a wave of anger and protectiveness wash over me. How could somebody do this to her? No wonder that she's been so withdrawn and anxious. She was carrying this enormous, terrible burden all by herself. The messages explained so much of her recent behavior. The isolation, the exhaustion, the fear in her eyes. I wanted to confront my niece and ask her why she had been hiding this from me all along. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay and that we would handle this together. But I also knew that I had to be careful. I didn't want her to feel like her trust had been completely violated. I needed to find a way to approach this delicately. And especially now that things have come this far. I don't want to just approach my niece. I want to approach her with a solution. I'm thinking about sharing this with my husband. I don't know what else to do. Do you guys have any suggestions, please? Update number 3. I didn't think I'd be coming back so soon. I was somewhere very adamant that the next time I updated, it would be to tell you guys that I've caught that culprit and saved my niece. However, in the past 2 weeks, I may have discovered something I wish I had not. I wish it wasn't true. Let me resume from where I left off. After I discovered those horrifying messages and deep fake images on Ella's phone, I was on high alert. I was determined to protect her from whoever was doing this, but I also started noticing other trouble signs around the house. Ella's behavior around Liam, my brother-in-law, began to stand out to me in a way that it had not before. She seemed particularly anxious and withdrawn when he was around. At first, I thought it was just her overall stress manifesting in different ways, but then I started to see a very familiar pattern. Whenever Liam entered the room, Ella would tense up. If she spoke to her, she would shrink away, her answers clipped and her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape route. Liam, on the other hand, seemed overly friendly. He would touch her shoulders a bit too often, stand too close and smile at her in a way that made me very uneasy. Well, one afternoon I was in the living room, pretending to read a book but really keeping an eye out on Ella. She was sitting right there at the dining table, trying to concentrate on her studies, and Liam walked in, and I saw her visibly stiffen. He leaned over her chair, too close for comfort, and made some comment I could not hear. Ella gave a tight, nervous smile and nodded, her fingers gripping the pen so hard that her knuckles turned white. Liam, on the other hand, glanced over at me, and for a moment our eyes met, and he gave me a grin that made my skin crawl. It was then that I started piecing things together. Could Liam be involved in what was happening to Ella? The thought made me sick to my stomach, but I knew I couldn't jump to conclusions without more evidence. I needed to watch more closely to see if there was anything concrete that I could act on. One night, I was working late on some project when I decided to go downstairs for a glass of water. The house was dark and quiet, and only sounds was the faint hum of the refrigerator. As I approached the kitchen, I heard hushed voices. My heart was racing. I stopped just outside the door, peeking through the crack, afraid there might be somebody, maybe a thief, in the house. It was Ella. Cornered near the sink, and Liam was standing way too close, his body blocking her exit. He had one hand on the counter and another lightly touching her hair, his fingers slipping through her strands, and Ella looked absolutely terrified, her eyes wide and pleading as she tried to back away, but there was nowhere for her to go. I felt a surge of protective anger. Without thinking, I burst into the kitchen and shouted, "What the hell's going on here?" Liam jumped back, his face a mask of false innocence, obviously, mumbling something about checking on Ella, and left hurriedly. Ella looked at me uncomfortable, tears welling up in her eyes, but she didn't say anything to me, and she just left. On the other hand, I was left standing there alone in the dark, trying to understand what I just saw. So, the next morning, I decided to go talk to Ella about my doubts. But she met me first and told me that she was looking for me. She told me she wanted to go back to her hostel early. What? I asked her why. She quickly started making excuses that her summer projects were incomplete, or that her friends were coming back early too to help her out. I've known this kid from her childhood. She spoke her first words in front of me, and of course I could tell she was lying, and how she had rehearsed all these excuses before coming to me. Then I did the craziest thing ever. I don't know what made me do it, but I tried to check whether my doubts were correct, so I bluffed. I told her I already knew everything about the photos, the threatening messages, and Liam. Well, I didn't know about the photos and messages. It was the Liam part I really wanted to check. To my horror, Ella breaks down. She collapsed in my arms and said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you." I hugged her and took her to her room, where she told me everything. How Liam has been making her uncomfortable for weeks. How he cornered her when nobody was around, saying inappropriate things and touching her in ways that made my skin crawl. She'd been too scared and ashamed to say anything, fearing nobody would believe her, or that it would make things worse. She said she didn't want to cause trouble for me, and I was furious. Not just at Liam, but at myself for not seeing it sooner. I promised Ella that I would protect her. She further told me that initially she thought it was just some random unknown stalker who managed to get her pictures from social media. But soon she discovered that it was Liam, and since then his threats and requests have been getting bolder. Next, what she told me was to pull the floor from beneath my feet. Next week, Adrian's cousin's birthday was coming up. Naturally, the whole family was invited, and of course we're all going to go. It turns out that my disgusting brother-in-law has asked my 16-year-old niece to stay behind, just to be all alone, for God knows what. She said it wasn't just a request, but practically a demand, and there would be consequences severely if she did not comply. I could see how scared she was. I hugged her tight, asking her to sleep with me for the night, and assured her that I would find some way. I've yet again promised her that I'll keep her safe, but I'm not sure how. However, no matter what I have to do, I'll make Liam pay for what he's been doing to her. Do you guys have any ideas or suggestions? If yes, please let me know. Updates number 4. This is the final update of the story. Hey guys, it's a month since I last updated, and Ella's gone back to her hostel, and as for Liam, well, he's rotting in a jail cell awaiting his punishment. Let me start from the beginning to explain to you guys how we got here. So, you remember how that pig asked Ella to stay behind when the family was planning to go to the cousin's birthday party? That was the final straw. I couldn't stand the thought of him having another opportunity to harm her. I knew I had to take decisive action to put an end to this once and for all. I hatched a plan to catch him red-handed to assure that he could never harm Ella or anyone else again. I shared my plan with Adrian, who was equally furious and concerned. We decided to stay behind on the day of the party. I also made sure the police were informed on standby, ready to intervene at the moment's notice. The idea was to create a situation where Liam would think that he was free-hand to act on his disgusting thoughts, only to be caught in the act and the day of the party arrived and everybody was getting ready to leave. Ella pretended to go along with it, putting on a brave face despite her fear. She had become quite good at hiding her emotions, but I could see anxiety. I gave her a very reassuring look, silently promising that we would get through this together. As the family left for the party, Adrian and I made our excuses and stayed behind. We waited in the shadows, tense and ready, and we had set up a small camera in the living room to catch any interaction between Liam and Ella, hoping to get undeniable proof of his intentions. Liam showed up thinking he was alone with Ella. The atmosphere changed the moment he walked in. He approached Ella with a sickening smile, clearly believing that his opportunity had finally arrived. My heart raced with a bund of fear as I watched from the hiding spot. Adrian was beside me, equally tensed up, and I could not believe that this was the true face of, his brother. Liam started talking to Ella in a very disgusting tone and moved close to her. Ella tried to back away, but he cornered her, much like he had done in the kitchen that night. As his hand reached out to her, I knew what he had. We had enough. Adrian and I burst into the room, our sudden appearance startling Liam and causing him to step back in shock. Within seconds, the police officers arrived that we had on standby, and having been alerted to move in at the right moment, they restrained Liam, who sputtered weak excuses and denial, but the evidence was there. We caught him in the act, and his intentions were undeniable. The police arrested Liam on the spot, and he was taken into custody. Ella was shaken but relieved. Adrian and I told her, comforting her as the reality of what had just happened sank in. We reassured her that she was safe now and that Liam would no longer be a threat to her or anyone else. In the days that followed, the environment of the house was a bit tense. The family was shocked when they learned the full extent of Liam's actions, especially Liam's wife, who both apologized to Ella and also filed for divorce. My husband and in-laws, too, decided to cut him off. It's been almost a month since then, and Ella is so much better now. She has regained the sparkle in her eyes and her lively personality. We were still making her see a therapist until she put her foot down and said that there would be no more therapist sessions once she went back to school. This incident has brought Adrian and me close. We had faced a serious threat together and had come out stronger. We talked more openly about our concerns, our fears, supporting one another as we went through all these chapters of our life. As for Liam, yeah, he's in jail, and the legal proceedings are still going on. I'm sure that he won't be coming out anytime soon. Not that anybody is missing that disgusting pig. Well, that's my story. Thank you for the support and kindness that you've shown me. See ya.